Welcome, Yamhill County, to Speaking Frankly. I'm your host, Howie Harkema, and our tagline is, "And how we doing?" Today, I have a wonderful guest. She's running for state representative of House District 23, Elise Yarnell Hollamon. Yay! So, Elise, you have a website, and you also have a Facebook page. So, beyond what we're doing here today, of an introduction to Yamhill County, would you tell people your website address and then your Facebook page?
Sure. My website is www.eliseyarnellhollamon.com, and my Facebook page is Elise Yarnell Hollamon for HD 23.
Perfect.
Yes.
And I'll bring that up again at the end. So what made you decide to run for the House of Representatives, District 23?
Well, I'm a straight shooter, and I will tell you that it was not on my radar as an ambition to pursue, at least not this cycle. But after some time had passed of announcing of filings, I was approached by a few different individuals, community leaders in our community on both sides of the aisle, and that's what actually got my attention. Republicans and Democrats encouraging me to consider it. And, I think some of it is that I have this idea in the back of my head that you need to be an expert in all things in order to file for candidacy. And so I am an old school thinker in that vein. But really it comes down to the health of our district. And this is an opportunity as we are just redistrict into House District 23, Newburgh specifically, an opportunity to see if there is an appetite out there for more of a centrist, moderate, slightly boring tone that I could bring of simplicity and less polarized politics than we have right now in our community.
Well, that's a good reason for jumping right in with both feet in the fire. So I know you have an extensive background. So what is the background that prepared you for this office?
Oh, well, I was raised in Beaverton. I went to a low high school, and daughter of two Republican evangelical Christians, and really feel it was the biggest blessing to have the stability of my family that I did growing up. And it was very regular that my dad and I would debate politics at dinner in high school and then in college. And so it really gave me a foundation growing up that debate is normal, and debate is how we grow as thinkers and learners, and that we should always be learning from the people around us that think differently than us. And my dad and my mom's circle of friends was very diverse growing up. They were not friends of just evangelical white Republican Christians. And I saw my parents' ideologies transform as they grew older. And so it always gave me that grace to know that you've got it wrong if you think you have it all right. And so I then went out to school on the East Coast in Philadelphia and studied political science, and really developed a passion for social justice. And I know social justice is a buzzword right now, but really what that means to me is recognizing that there are grave disparities within our own local communities. And I was raised in the evangelical church that really talked about missions overseas, and so being in college, it really challenged me to get involved in my community, and that our local issues, we've got plenty of them, right? So coming back here to the Beaverton area, I then really went through a phase from about 21 to 24 of really a crisis of identity. And I think all of us can relate to that. At one point and another, we're all going to go through some sort of change like that. And for me, my coping skills were not great and turned to alcohol. And have a long line of addicts in my family, and it really just took me out super early. And looking back now, that was the greatest blessing of my life because it humbled me early. I talk about law enforcement played a huge role in my life. I was arrested a couple times, and really, I was given the second chance to be better, right? To seek help and be better. And so we talk a lot in recovery about playing the tape through and rigorous honesty and just all of these principles that really gave me a foundation to be a leader. And an addict is in recovery, but they're not recovered, right? So it's a daily journey of trying to be better and trying to serve the people around me better. And so I really attribute like some of the darkest times of my life as to why I'm able to be the authentic leader that I am today, and why I'm able to recognize that I do not have all the answers. And so a lot of my policy positions, I'm forming them, right? And I need people in my life and in our community to help inform me of the best possible outcome for all people. So coming through that, I then started working at Providence, and I've been at Providence for the last 10 years and have nothing but great experiences and learnings from working at Providence, and really latched onto the Catholic social teachings that Providence has to offer in our communities. Again, very social justice oriented. And long story short, I made it out to Newburgh and I took a job that I wasn't necessarily super excited about. And sometimes those are the greatest pivots in your life. And so became a senior manager over the Yamhill area and had the opportunity to live, work, and serve in my community. And when we talk about really what the health of communities look like, that is the ideal state, that we can all live, work, and serve in our communities. And so as I'm running for office, those are that is one of my main priorities, is to make housing affordable enough that people that work in our community can live in our community and can then serve in our community. So that then, I had the opportunity. My life has been a lot of just saying yes to the next thing. And if I have the capacity to serve, then I should say yes. And so I was appointed to city council, and, winning a little guns blazing, thinking I could know everything right from the start, I'll be honest. And quickly within the first 2 meetings realized, okay, got to slow down, got to listen, got to learn. People around me know a lot more than I do. And that really helped me become a good listener and become a good learner, and to create space in the room for other voices. And that my voice isn't always the one that needs to be heard right away. So I'm really proud of our council. As everyone's aware, Newburgh has been going through a lot of internal turmoil. And I guess the only thing I'll mention is that it's super sad to me. It's super sad that, not one side or the other, but both sides of the fence have really taken it to its furthest extreme. And it's very difficult to know how we're going to come back to the middle. And my slogan for my campaign is "Meet me in the middle." And not the middle where you have to compromise your convictions, right? The middle where you can engage in conversation and dialogue. Somehow over the pandemic, we have forgotten how to do that. And so my hope is, from being on city council and my role in Providence through COVID, I've had to do a lot of listening, a lot of negotiating, a lot of compromising, and I'm better for it. And so I really do think I have the capacity to bring our community together and really search for the common good values that we all share, to hopefully bring our district to a healthy place that all people feel heard and valued.
That's awesome. Let's talk about negotiations. You just brought that up,
Sure.
but also collaboration and conflict resolution, and how it will assist you as a state representative.
Ooh, I think it's honestly tragic right now. It's not just our county or our county folk and EML that are confronted with this right now, right? It really is a national and a state issue, and probably even international if you look at the entire world. I feel like there were a number of issues that we're dealing with regionally, whether it's public safety or whether it's mental health or housing. We were almost on the edge of the cliff looking over when the pandemic happened of some pretty big issues that needed to be discussed. And as we moved through the pandemic, really the polarization and politicalization of the pandemic, which really was a public health crisis that all of a sudden became a political crisis, right?
Right.
And, you know, it really, being in the role that I've been in healthcare, it's been an interesting journey to walk, especially in Yamhill County, where there may be more conservative views on vaccines or on the legitimacy of testing or masking, or just COVID altogether.
Yeah.
But then also, you know, needing to uphold my commitment to implementing guidelines from various credentialing bodies, right? And so I've really approached it from the mindset of always offering to listen, right? There are people that really do believe on the right that Democrats have no desire to hear their logic or their reasoning behind their values. And I think they're right. I think that that's absolutely right now, is that, you know, Republicans don't want to hear from Democrats and Democrats don't want to hear from Republicans. And it's all about how do we get the supermajority? How do we flip seats? Instead of sitting down together and saying, we both live here. We both need to find common ground that we can both live with, because it's easier. It's easier to push one side away, surround yourself with people that think like you, surround yourself on social media with think tanks that have core values, and see someone else's other. And so I think that, you know, through Providence and really my role in public health within the community, you know, I have created space for my friends that are anti-vaccine or maybe just anti-vaccine mandate, right? Or anti-masking. And I will say that they have changed me. You know, I will say, I think the biggest test of a leader is if they can be changed after informed. And, you know, I have a circle and, you know, right now I'm in a space where I don't support vaccine mandates. You know, I support vaccines. I choose to have a vaccine for myself and for my family. But after lots of conversations with one of my closest friends, who's a very conservative Republican, I came to change my belief. And, you know, I do believe that we got to the place where we did because of the politicalization of COVID to mandate vaccines, but I do think it was the wrong call. So that's one example of personal compromise and how speaking with others that disagree on some core values with me can ultimately lead to compromise and changing my mind as a leader.
I appreciate your candor there. I'm going to skip COVID because you talked about that enough.
Sure,
let's go into affordable housing and
Sure.
what that can mean for Yamhill County, please.
Whew. This is the one that I think we obviously all want housing to be affordable. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't want housing to be affordable. But I do think that affordable housing is a buzzword that's been kind of claimed by the left without a lot of real tactics to make it happen. And as I have ventured into running for House District 20, I've spoken with a number of people that are probably right of center, that are, you know, business community leaders, developers, consultants, and really just realize how little I actually know, right? So I think for me, houselessness is the outcome of unaffordable housing. That is one of the outcomes. And so I feel very comfortable in the space of houselessness, as I know you do too, because you're an actual expert. I'm just a helper. But I believe that housing is a right. Housing, shelter, that is a right that every person deserves. Then human dignity is at risk when they don't have shelter. And
there is a difference between affordable housing and low cost housing. And it's apparent when you see an affordable house at $300,000 to $450,000 being built, that the houseless are never going to be in that unit. However, there is some solutions in tiny house villages, cottage clusters, et cetera, et cetera. Would you talk about that?
Yeah. So again, like I feel really lucky that I'm on Newburgh City Council, and that we have a great community development director who I've learned a lot from. And our list on affordable housing is like 24 items, right? Like here's 24 ideas that we can run towards. Which ones do we want to pick? And I think but what I was getting at is that it may seem easier to do tiny homes or to do some cottage clusters, but the reality is that the system in which we've created around housing and land use and zoning is wrong, right? So it was intentionally created to be the way it is. And so my first thing I would recommend is review of your code, right? So a review of your housing code to see where you have opportunities to diversify your housing. And also land is an issue, right? Land, and in a community like Newburgh, not going further beyond the urban growth boundary is important, right? Like we do not want to become Portland, and I do not want to live in Portland. I love the size of Newburgh and don't want to overgrow Newburgh like Beaverton has, for example. But a lot of what this has to do with, a lot of people think SDCs are the problem. SDCs are not the problem. SDCs are a problem from a bigger problem, which is growing infrastructure, and that developers then hold the cost of that, right? So in order to truly combat unaffordable housing, it has to start with incentives for developers to want to build in Newburgh. So that is a bigger conversation that is much more difficult to talk about. And then, for example, do we push back on needing to have the level of infrastructure that we currently need to build a new apartment complex, for example? Those are the big questions that I think a lot of people don't realize have to be answered in order to attract the developers and incentivize low-income housing. And so I believe that it's possible. I believe that we can get there. We need to relook at what requirements we're insisting upon infrastructure-wise to carry into SDCs, to then understand, where do we want to push back and what can we live with, so that developers then can be incentivized to have low-income housing. A portion of the portion of the apartment complex they're building, a floor is dedicated to low-income housing, for example. So I'm excited to engage in those conversations. I think that they're really complicated, but I'm excited to dig in and really understand what we need to do as a community to make housing more affordable.
Well, I think the first thing is more town halls, more awareness of the situation, zoning changes, ordinance changes in order to get there.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about homelessness for houselessness neighbors for just a minute. Talk about the Newburgh Emergency Shelter and Harvest House.
Sure. So this is something I haven't been super vocal about, pretty intentionally, I'll say, because I really do believe that humans deserve housing, right? And it shouldn't be showcased, it shouldn't be, shouted from the mountaintop of someone that's helping someone get what they actually deserve, right? But we have had the opportunity, Community Wellness Collective is a nonprofit that myself and Kristen Stoller co-founded, really when we lost numerous kids to suicide about 5 years ago, just in response to bring people together around dialogue. And ironic, now here we are trying to get people back to dialogue, but access to mental health and addiction services. But because we had achieved our 501c3 status, the Newburgh Emergency Shelter folks came to us asking, this does fit in alignment with your addiction and mental health access strategy. Would you consider sponsoring us as a fiscal agency for formalizing a full-blown low barrier shelter? And of course, I said to Chris, I'm like, we can't say no to this. Like, we have to do this. This is something that we need to do. And so we went along, and within the last year, so we opened in January of 2021, so just a little over a year ago. And we started 5 days a week open, and now we're open 7 days a week. It's in a house right in downtown Newburgh. It's a partnership with YCAP. They've been generous enough to really give us the space for us to operate, which is, unheard of. And we have a great relationship with YCAP. But it was fully volunteer based. And I think we just quickly realized how difficult it is to sustain an operation on a volunteer base. And so we now have contract employees that operate this space for us on 7 days a week. And we're now looking to expand to some daytime hours as well. And all of our staff are going through peer support training. A lot of our staff are really proud and have amazing stories themselves, right? Of some of them houseless, some of them battled addiction, they're doing amazing. And so it really is just a model of giving back to the community as the community has given back to us. And so I'm super proud of it, but all credit goes to Kara, who is the director of operations and does the day-to-day grind and is a super compassionate, action-oriented person. So
She's amazing.
She's amazing. Yeah.
We're going to move on to holistic healthcare, because you have a little piece out on your website that's really very cool. So would you talk about holistic healthcare, please?
Well, what part of my website was cool? Now I'm trying to think, what did I say that was cool? So healthcare for me, going into COVID, I would have answered that I would have had a different answer around access to healthcare than I do now, probably. And it'll be interesting to see where I flesh out after a couple years post-pandemic. But the emotion of COVID right now really for me has exacerbated the need around mental health and addiction services. And, I think as a society we still other that, mental health, addiction, that's not healthcare, that's your problem. And, we rank 49th in the country for access to addiction and mental health resources, which is really gross, in my opinion, being a pretty progressive state that we rank at the very bottom. And that's not, I think that's a morality problem, in my opinion. And really, I'm excited to hear from the supermajority in the House why they haven't made that a priority, and why they're okay with being 49th in the country in a progressive state.
Sure.
So I find it unacceptable as a person that my husband and I have both had to go to treatment ourselves. The only way we got there was because we come from a family that will battle for us until they can figure it out. So, my hope is that access to care in a rural setting, talking about rural settings right now, if you look across Yamhill County into Polk County, there's not much, right? We love our Yamhill County public health and mental health team, love them, they're great, and still they're under-resourced to serve the amount of need that we have. And I think just like we were illy prepared for the pandemic, we are going to be illy prepared to come out of it to serve those people that are struggling with mental health and addiction. And so I think that will be the next big thing. I think that will be what we need to radically invest in. And in order to do that, it's going to really take, in my opinion, people like myself that have walked through it, that are ready and willing to be really put on the stand to advocate. And so my hope is that every Oregonian has access to mental health and addiction treatment, just as they do to healthcare that is physical healthcare, right? And so that it all becomes healthcare. So, and right now, I'm sure that the CCO or OHA would say, oh, they do have access, but in order to access mental health, you have to be in active state of wanting to self-harm, self or others. That is not acceptable. So.
How about sustainable economic development in our area?
So this goes back to me of what does a healthy community look like? And, you know, this is really what I've learned a lot from Doug Rux in the city of Newburgh.
He's awesome.
Yeah, is, if as long as we're losing our community members that live in Newburgh to Portland jobs, we're never going to be able to become the community that we want to become. And so we need to attract businesses to want to work in our community. And in order to do that, it comes back to the SDCs and it comes back to infrastructure. So it really is this like cyclical issue that we have, that we're going to have to really dig in deep together across the aisle. It's going to require Republicans and Democrats and independents to come together with solutions to want to attract businesses to stay here and incentivize them to want to come here. So, as we're coming out of COVID, we talk a lot about small businesses, and I am a huge supporter of small businesses. I love our Newburgh Downtown Coalition, Taste Newburgh, Chamber of Commerce. They've done amazing work during COVID to really support our small businesses. And also big businesses are important. We do also need a healthy mix of businesses to create jobs. That is the reality. If we want, our families, our mom and dads to be able to go to their kids' soccer game after work, they've got to work here. They can't be driving an hour back from Portland after they're done at 5 p.m. Right? So I'm excited to learn from some of our business community as to what it really will take for other businesses to want to grow into Newburgh. But I do know it's going to take a mix of small and large businesses if that happens.
So workforce housing and people commuting on a constant basis is a real drag, man.
Yep.
So we need to think about what the future of all of Yamhill County looks like in that factor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have one more question and then we'll go to the last question. Public safety. Throughout COVID, it's been very difficult, as you have talked about. There is a division that seems to be growing between the GOP and the Dems, and how we counteract each other and are somewhat, how do I put this, divisive at the least. How can we be safe publicly with threats on Facebook and et cetera, et cetera?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that I probably have a a stereotypical progressive view on policing. I probably would surprise some people that I don't probably share the same ideas around policing. In terms of first to your question around, threats made and, just the level of divisiveness that has been created in the last 2 years, I will just say, it is appalling the level of comments on Facebook that, sometimes I'll, be bad and read the comments and I cannot even believe what people are willing to say to each other. And, for me,
it didn't used to be this way. That's the part that just absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah. And it's from both sides. And
yes.
It's not okay. And, we talk, I'm not going to comment on the recall of the school board, but I will say that, what both sides have right is that bullying has completely gotten out of control in the school, but more so from adults, right? Yes. Children learn from their adults. And I can only imagine what children see and hear in their home if their families are willing to engage in commentary like that on Facebook. And so my concern from a public safety perspective, and I've been commented on, and I wouldn't say targeted, but people have said things about me on Facebook, and that's fine. And I think like as an elected official though, what makes me sad is to see elected officials engage in comments on Facebook that really should not ever occur, right? Like Facebook should be an informative space for elected officials to share information, to encourage their community, to spread ideas to better the health of their district, etc. It is not a place to, bash other individuals as an elected official. So I will say, that is definitely a commitment of mine that I happily will engage with someone on Facebook for informative issues. But the second that it really turns into a personal attack, I have no desire to attack back, right? Like that's not who I am. That's not who I want our community to be. And I hope that our elected officials can do better in the future. I do want to say though, in terms of public safety in general, policing in general, I absolutely do not agree that we need to defund the police. And if anything, I believe that we need to reinvest in the police, and that's going to actually require more money going into police. I'm really proud of the work that Newburgh Dundee Police has done around mental health, partnering with Yamhill County Mental Health to provide more crisis management. And my dream is really to have a cahoots model across.
Mine too.
And it's totally right at our fingertips.
That's
and
right.
We have the right law enforcement teams across the county to be able to engage in that. And so, we need to be really careful to not polarize the conversation around policing, because everyone is doing the best job that they know how to do with the circumstances that they're given. And what I call it scope creep, right? We have it in healthcare as well, where we have scope creep of mental health addiction services. That was not the intent of law enforcement, nor should it be, in my opinion. We need to surround our law enforcement teams with other disciplines to support the growing need that they're confronted with every day. And so for people to just chalk it up as defund the police, I think is a cop-out to really—
what a pun.
Standing. Oh, no pun intended. That was good.
So ride-alongs by crisis management that deal with mental health issues consistently. How do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, and I know it's welcomed, at least by the Newburgh Dundee Police Department. But yeah, I would love to see personally social workers, peer support specialists, probably a psychologist on the books of Newburgh. And I actually believe it should probably be on the books and not necessarily a contracted out service. It really should be a part of the core team to really change that we have in place, right? And so again, I want to reiterate that police have an extraordinary amount of responsibility, and the calls that they are received daily primarily are mental health and addiction concerns, right? And so we need to invest in our police force. They deserve that. And I believe it's going to be from bringing in other disciplines to create a really healthy mix of a team.
So I have one last question. Do you have any upcoming meet and greets or debates? When and where? And how can the community assist you in your run for candidacy for House District 23?
Sure. So I have a meet and greet kickoff. I'm doing a meet and greet in every District 23 city before the primary. So my first one is at Social Goods in Newburgh on April 2nd, which is a Tuesday, from 4 to 6 p.m. at Social Goods. And it really will be an informal— all of my meet and greets in the primary season are going to be very informal, an opportunity to come and have a conversation with me, ask me any questions. I would love to see independents and Republicans there as well. It is my absolute commitment to act on behalf of all of my constituents, not just Democrats, because I'm a Democrat. The following Tuesday will be at the main cafe in Dayton from 4 to 6 p.m. as well. And both of those events are on my Facebook. And then I will be inching down District 23 in the coming weeks before the primary. But what you can do for me is to engage with me. I think that is the biggest ask I have, is that, you know, when I decided I was going to run, I actually went down and met with Representative Sharp and had a conversation with her. And I just would like to say that, you know, I have a great respect for Representative Sharp. And the thing that I have noticed about her from afar, and then also in my interactions with her, is that she is genuinely honest and is a direct shooter, will tell you exactly what she thinks, really with no risk of how it will be received, which I appreciate of her. And so, you know, I'm really hopeful that her and I, with both of our styles that are very similar, can engage in an actual candidacy together, right? And I think our county has desperate need of that, of talking about issues and debating issues over mudslinging and personal conflict. And so I hope that her and I can do that and engage in multiple debates together, and, you know, be friendly at the end of it and demonstrate that it actually is possible for two good people to have differing views on some issues and still walk away having respect for one another. So yeah, that would be what I would ask, is that people engage in healthy conversation and debate.
Great. So Elise's website is EliseYarnellHollamon.com, and her Facebook page is Elise Yarnell Hollamon for House District 23. Please go out there and check out her information. Get involved in her running, and bring questions, because I know that's what she likes the most, is questions and what we can do for each other in Yamhill County. So thank you so much, Elise, for being on today. I'll try to have you back on before the primary and such.
Right.
So thank you very much for
Thank you
being
so much,
on. I'm going to end the recording here. Thank you for watching
Bye.
Yamhill County. Yay.
Thank you.